lecture today. Now, I will go into military interventions, coup d'etats in Turkey. Now, coup d'etat in Turkey has been coup d'etats have been very decisive. You see, up to 1980. Now, with 1980, it seemed civilian military relationships stabilized, came to stable relationships. But then we had a postmodern coup in 1997, another one, but didn't happen in 2007. It didn't happen. But on 2016, 15th of July, there was a failed coup attempt. So I will try to put all these into a sociological framework in terms of state and society relationships. State and society relationships. State, in this case, a section of state, military. Military is a part of repressive apparatus of the state. And then there are ideological apparatuses. If you remember from your second year, Althusser talks about state, dividing it into harder part, institutional, military, court system, bureaucracy, administrative system, one part, and then cultural, mass media, family. He included, all ideological institutions in the other part. So, if you like, the relationship between two parts of the state and society, social structure in an historical, sociological framework. Now, my first source I will assign to you, and I am using today, is Feroz Ahmed's The Making of Modern Turkey book. As you know, we already used some of the chapters of Feroz Ahmed's 1993, date of publication 1993 book, The Making of Modern Turkey. And as I told you previously, Feroz Ahmed's book deals with these military interventions, almost last chapters, starting from chapter 6, chapter 7, 8, 9. These are all about military interventions. And he starts actually with the first one, because the first one is the one that took place in 27th of May 1960. 27th of May 1960. Up to that point, military was subordinated to the civilian governments, civilian government and civilian part of the administration, and this was true for the earlier part, that is from 1923 up to 38, and then up to 46, transition to multi-party system. In 1950, coming of the to power of an opposition party through democratic elections in 1950, Democratic Party, and it was okay in first 9 years, maybe first 8 years, from 1950 up to 1958, maybe 1956. Now, Feroz Ahmed talks about Democratic Party governments passing of a law, a national defense law, in 18th May 1956. Now, he says, now Feroz Ahmed says, this law resembled wartime measures of 1940s. You know, the Second World War, during Second World War, Republican People's Party had a national defense law and had regulated the economy, the pricing of the goods, of the services. And as we discussed this earlier, the minorities, there were repressive measures to minorities, enacting also a law and a capital tax. Remember, okay. Now, similarly, Democratic Party too started facing some problems in the economy. Okay, now it was a populist government, and as we discussed, there is this import substitution industrialization, and import substitution industrialization. Where does the capital come? No, from where the savings for the investments come? You know, now mostly it was in earlier times. It was from agriculture to the industrial sector, and there was not much foreign investment from other countries. So as the rural population, villages, became more and more prosperous, and this is actually from 1950s onward, you know, peasants entered into we discussed this, a process of transformation in the coastal areas. It was already started, you know, earlier. So peasants gradually becoming farmers, more and more being integrated into the market and into the cities, and more their consumption became urbanized. So you know, there was a problem of increasing demand for consumption goods and not enough investment. Now, import substitution industrialization requires foreign money, you know, the dollars or marks at that time, or pound, you know, in order to import input material, which is input into the import substitution industrialization. And for that, there should be export of agricultural goods, but there should also be some other source. You know, tourism is not very developed at that time. What was the source? The source was the migrants into Germany, into France, and other Western countries. Again, it started during 60s. During 50s, it was very limited. You know, immigration to Germany, international migration from Turkey to Germany to France and other European countries is a 1960s, 1970s phenomenon. You see, with that, even with that money coming from the workers, there were problems during 70s, as we discussed again when we were discussing import substitution industrialization, especially towards the end of 1970s. The crisis was so severe, and then there was the third military intervention. But a similar thing happened, a milder version of it happened during the late years of 1950s. There was a devaluation. The dollar went from 2.80, as we discussed again, to 9 lira, $1, from 2.8 lira being $1 to 9.225 lira, $1, So at the beginning, Menderes government looked for aid from Europe, from America, and initially there was an aid, something like $400 million, and actually debt was also 400 million. The foreign debt of Turkish economy, but that was not enough. So Menderes wanted more and went to President Eisenhower, for more money, but Eisenhower didn't give it. So Menderes decided to go to Moscow, although there was still Cold War, and he was a cold warrior. Feroz Ahmed says he was a cold warrior, but nevertheless, because he needs, for investment, he needs foreign money. So there were problems with this defense law and all others, and there was a committee established to go after the opposition, and students started being active, and finally in 27th of May, there was first military intervention, first coup d'etat in Turkey. Now, I wish it didn't happen. Personally, as a sociologist, I would have preferred that there were already 3 elections: one in 1950, one in 1954, another one in 1957, third one. A fourth one was going to be in 1961. I wish that in 1961 an election took place and there was a change of power, from the party in power to the party in opposition, or some more legitimization if they win the elections. But unfortunately, the intervention took place, and it opened the gate for other interventions, other coup d'etats, other military interventions in Turkish political, social, political, economic history. But nevertheless, I was already in 1960. I was 15 years old, 15 years old. So it is my first politicization, actually. I was an 8-year student, third year of junior high school. It was actually we were having a picnic in Denizli Lisesi, the high school of Denizli, that was the only lycée at that time. And our class, together with our teachers, we went to a nearby forest, and we were having a picnic when the news came through the radio that there was a coup d'etat. What was it? We were bewildered, and the schools were closed, and I went back to my village and started following the events from there. So, and then, of course, next year, I was in the first year lycée, or my 9th year, and I was involved in talking about the proposed constitution in 1961, constitution, the new constitution, because there was going to be a referendum about the constitution. And I was talking about the content of the constitution, what are the things that it brings. So, as a 15-year-old, I was somehow 15, 16-year-old, I was committed to the new constitution. And you will read this in chapter 7. This new constitution brought unionization, for example, for workers. It brought 2 houses. The National Assembly was made, there was only one National Assembly before 1961 Constitution. Now there were 2, the Senate and Assembly, and Grand National Assembly was made up of the 2. You see, as a young student, now already 16, 17 years old, I am reading Sartre, Camus, and other authors, you see, existentialism. I was not yet reading Marx or the political ones, but gradually I was looking into politics, state, society, relationships, what type of modernization is going on, and I was somehow, although I was in the science section of the lycée, mathematics, physics, chemistry, I was a science section student. What I don't know what is it called now, that section, but I was reading more and more philosophy and novels and other type of material in my last 2 years, actually, my 10th and 11th years. At that time, 11 years, secondary school ended at 11th year. I have read, I counted it, I was making a list of novels I have read, and it was already over 100 novels that, I was, now military interventions and Bahattin Akşit's reading of novels. You are already saying, Hocam, come to the point. Okay, now I am coming back to the point. Now, about the first constitution, first military intervention, and first constitution, it is this much. Now, the point is, again, I will be involved here. This constitution led to democratization. As a matter of fact, towards 1969-70, already the business circles were saying this constitution is larger than Turkish people is ready. It's a large dress for them. Now it should be tighter. Some of the rights should be curbed. The labor should be more disciplined. The students should be more disciplined, because already I was, as a graduate of science section of Denizli High School, I was in Middle East Technical University in the engineering school, but there was already some idea clubs, fikir kulüpleri, and there was a socialist fikir kulübü, socialist idea club in the Middle East Technical University. Now, I don't know to what extent that was influential, although in 1966, I was a member of it, I admit, yes. But before that, I think I read Vivegel Krai's, we discussed that last hour, RElaltions study, you know, RElaltions before heavy industry, a town in the coast, a coastal town before heavy industry. You know, that influenced me, I think. Also, I think I remember I reading ideas, philosophies in the East and in the West, and the parallels between the two. And gradually, also in the science studies, I was focusing on a corpuscular theory of light versus wave theory of Huygens and Newton. You know, so I decided to re-enter into entrance exam, and I have chosen social sciences of the Middle East Technical University and psychology and sociology. I could have gone both way, either psychology or sociology, but I have chosen sociology because I thought that Turkey is a good laboratory. Turkish society, Turkish military society, Turkish state-society relationships is a good laboratory. Instead of studying about the theories of matter, light, universe, yes, I was interested in them, but to study them, I need physics laboratories, I thought at that time. Anyway, so in these idea clubs, students, engineering students, physics students, and also social science students were discussing why Turkey was underdeveloped. Okay, underdevelopment was not yet coined. So remember my book, Underdeveloped Capitalism. I coined az gelişmiş capitalism, the concept of underdeveloped capitalism. So this was really within the framework of this new constitution. But as I said, the opposition, there was an opposition to this in the business circles, and Feroz Ahmed says also there was opposition in the more conservative circles. For example, there were against these idea clubs, there were also organizations like Association to Combat Communism, you know, the on the right wing of political spectrum. And also there was more and more, this is from Feroz Ahmed again, there was more and more Saudi money under the this organization of Union of World of Islam, Rabitatul Alamul Islam, Rabitatul Alamul Islam. In that framework, there were more and more Saudi money coming. But within the national framework, there was in the opposition was being differentiated. For example, in 1968, as there was university occupations in Paris, in throughout the world, in Metu, there was also new parties. For example, the first Islamist party was established by Professor Necmettin Erbakan. Again, Feroz Ahmed notes this. Islamist National Order Party was for the first time established. But all this was too much for some circles, and hence military stepped in 1971, the second coup d'etat. This time, just opposite of 27 May 1960, to curb, to lessen the number of rights and close some of the parties on the Islamist and on the socialist sides. So that's the second military intervention, 1971. In 1971, when the intervention took place, I graduated from Middle East Technical University in 1968 and went to University of Chicago for my MA and PhD studies. And I was there. And then in 1972, I came back, but full-fledged, 1971 coup d'etat's consequences were effective in Middle East Technical University as well. And for example, Mübeccel Kray was forced to leave the university, and she went back to Istanbul because she was not comfortable, actually, already in Middle East Technical University Social Sciences Department and Sociology Department. But I was there as a young sociologist. I stayed there. I collected my material from Çorum as a middle-sized city and went back to Chicago to defend my thesis. Now, after I came back in 1972, around that time, while I was doing the collection of material and writing my thesis, a coalition government between Social Democratic Ecevit and Islamist Erbakan formed a coalition. That was really, instead of a polarization between these two, there was a coalition, and actually, Bahattin Akşit was working for the planning of one of the islands in the Marmara, and she was a part of a team to collect data, and we were going from Erdek to Marmara Island. While on the ship, we heard that there was the coalition of Erbakan and Ecevit decided to go to Cyprus, an operation, a peace operation, or an invasion, whatever you call it, because there were fights between the Cypriot Greek militia and the Turkish, and it was becoming bloody. So we heard that news when we were on the ship, really. So that was the experience. Okay, there was a second coup d'etat, but afterwards, again, interestingly, it gave rise an unprecedented phenomenon of a coalition between Islamism and social democracy, which will take place later during 1990s. But before I come to that, let me focus very shortly on what happened after this coalition was dissolved. You see, there was a real political polarization after that. Unfortunately, polarization, actually, the left of center and right of center, two main parties, they couldn't agree to elect a president. There was such a polarization. Why? Why? Because there was so much economic difficulties. There was inflation, high inflation, and more important, the foreign money, the marks that were coming from the workers from Germany was not enough. You know, the central bank did, you know, the head of the government at that time, it was Demirel in 1979. You know, we need even last penny, you know, foreign currency, but the central bank didn't have that, you know. So there was a 24th of January measures, and Özal was actually, he was not the prime minister, but the responsible person to develop these measures and to apply them, but to application of these measures, implementation of these measures were difficult in a democratic framework. They were saying so, and then there was polarization, fighting between revolutionary and nationalist and Islamist youths, and you know, there were deaths every day, up to 5,000 sometimes a day. You know, no, that's too high. Anyway, you know, there were high number of deaths in that period. No, in that period, in last few years of 1970s. So, and just before that, it was not only now in Ankara, Istanbul, Izmir, the metropolitan centers of Turkey, but there was conflicts in Çorum, in Kahramanmaraş. You know, somehow the new political polarization mobilized, you know, the left and right mobilization mobilized Sunni Alevi ethnic religious relationship, or they they put that into framework of polarization, overimposed or superimposed. You see, Alevi Sunni cleavage is superimposed over left-right cleavage, polarization, and as a result, there were killings of Alevis in Çorum and in Kahramanmaraş. So that was July 1980, and 12 September of 1980, military took the command, and that was the third military intervention, and it was a comprehensive military intervention. And at 1 p.m., General Evren was talking from the radios. A friend of mine telephoned and called, you know, something is happening. So we woke up and listened to it. And you see the effects of 1980, 12th of September, military intervention had its effects very long lasting. You know, as a matter of fact, the constitution that was made during 1982, 83, and then there was a referendum again. This time I voted against it. I was among the 12% that said no. Actually, the majority, 91%, 93% said yes. No, actually, 91.37% to be exact. So the remaining 9%, less than 9%, was opposition to the new constitution. But now Feroz Ahmed evaluates this high turnout for the constitution because in order to stop military intervention and the coup government, it was necessary that a constitution should be passed. If people voted like I did, in opposition to the constitution, the military rule would have continued. I knew that, but I knew that majority will vote in favor of the constitution. But the generals should be aware that there was also those who are opposed to its over repressive measures. It was like in 1970 coup d'etat, the 1960 constitution was tightened. In 1980, it was more elaborated, but again tight. It was a constitution made up by the military. Although the military established a consultative assembly, and a member of our sociology department was one of the members of consultative assembly that made that constitution, İbrahim Karal, rahmetli. He asked our department to develop a constitution, a proposal for a constitution, and we did. In the sociology department, all the members of sociology and psychology, both, Department of Social Science, and I was the head of the department actually. So we met every week, or sometimes 2-3 times a week, and we developed a democratic constitutional a proposal for the constitution and gave it to İbrahim Karal. I don't know whether they used it. I don't think they used it. The majority, as I said, was more conservative and more restrictive, rather than bringing more freedoms, etc. Again, although I am talking about all this military interventions, I am making it in a sense with my anecdotes, my personal experiences. I am combining this unpleasant events. The military interventions are repressive, bloody. Actually, after 1980 intervention, even a 17-year-old youth, although he didn't commit the crime, he was hanged. Youth, because there was this policy of the junta to hang one from the right, one from the left. So that was really very sad, very sad days. Anyway, after the military intervention, 24 of January measures that the economy required, and Özal prepared. Now Özal continued working with the generals, and then the time came for the elections, And as Özal established a party in opposition to the two-party system of the generals, and he won. But Evren, the general, was the head of the state, and he was the prime minister. So they worked together. Evren, Özal model, one can call the model that was being implemented from 1980 to 1993, perhaps, when Özal died. So there was a new election. Demirel became the president, from presidency of Özal to presidency of Demirel. And during that period, during 1990s, again, the right of center and left of center parties formed a coalition in 1991, 92, around that time. And then we approached 1995. Now, in that elections, for the first time, the Islamist Party had the highest votes, 25% of the votes, and the rest were distributed among the left of center and right of center parties. And Erbakan, the Islamist Party, together with one of the right of center parties, formed a coalition. And then in 1997, there was that postmodern coup, although military and the Prime Minister Erbakan together declared some articles, some measures to stop the right and left associations or groups that are against the military's conception of a Kemalist republic at that time. So 1997, and then again, economy is in crisis, and there are coalitions again now, this time other parties, Ecevit and the Nationalist Party and the Anavatan Party formed a coalition. And then again, there was a crisis, a constitutional crisis. Actually, a constitution was thrown, one of the partners of the coalition, through a book of constitution to another one. And there was a deflation. In 1995, there was one, and then there was another one in 2001, and there was a crisis. And then there was okay. Now in 1993, or Feroz Ahmed's evaluations is up to 1993. Now after that, I go into some articles now, or theses about military interventions. Why military interventions takes place? Okay. Now, I will first cite Yalçın Küçük's thesis about military coups in Turkey. Now, this is a thesis that he developed earlier. Now, before 1980, military coup. This is now actually towards the end of 1960s, the beginning of 1970s. At that time, he said that the 1960 coup d'etat and 1970 coup d'etat, a 10-year period, is the result of an Kondratiev type economic cycle, crisis cycles. You see, in 1958, 59, 60, there was a crisis, and then there was a second crisis 10 years later, 1969, 1970, 1971, 10 years. Now, Kondratiev cycles are 50-year cycles, but Turkish economy, the cycles in the Turkish economy is within the 50-year cycle. There are smaller cycles, so economic crisis cycles and military interventions correspond to each other. A kind of cyclical theory, but coups, military coups are related to economic crises. Now, there is on the opposite pole, I will mention about Ernest Gellner's theory. Ernest Gellner's theory in 1997, actually, I already mentioned, edited books. Sibel Bozdoğan and Reşat Kasaba edited a book in 1997, Rethinking Modernity and National Identity in Turkey. Remember that, I mentioned all the chapters there, and one chapter is by Ernest Gellner. It's called The Turkish Option in Comparative Perspective. Turkish Option in Comparative Perspective. Now, in this article, Ernest Gellner advances a theory about the exceptional development of Turkey, or a typology. Actually, okay, now let me go back to Ernest Gellner's book in 1981, Muslim Society. Okay, Muslim Society, published by Cambridge University Press. Especially there's a long first chapter. In that first chapter, Ernest Gellner combines Ibn Khaldun's theory of Asabiya, theory of how the center and the periphery, the tribes in the periphery and the central state in the city, okay, so rural, urban, tribal, urban relationships, how every 100 years, tribes with strong asabiya comes to the city and conquered corrupted state, and a new state is being established, a younger and more stronger and better than the previous one. Now, Ibn Khaldun, as you remember from your classical sociology, is a 14th century sociologist, one of the early sociologists before sociology, before modern sociology, living between 1332 and 1406, and he written this book, 7 volumes of this book, Kitab al-Ibar wa Diwan al-Mubtada wal Khabar fi Tarikh al-Arab wal Barbar ve manashrahum min Dawlash Shan al-Akbar. Book of lessons, record of beginnings and events in the history of Arabs and Berbers and their powerful contemporaries. The first one is called Al-Muqaddimah. the introduction. Here, actually, he developed how empires emerge and established, and how then they are go into decline and then die in a sense, and then how an organic theory, how a new one is being born, and the theory of asabiya, or in the sociological terms, not even we can talk about cohesion, social cohesion, or solidarity, mechanical solidarity and organic solidarity of Durkheim. But this is his mechanical solidarity is this tribal solidarity, this asabiya, strong asabiya, and how it comes and renovates. Okay, now Ernest Gellner combines this theory with a British philosopher's theory, David Hume's. David Hume lived in 18th century, between 1811 and 1886, and the title that where he talks about this flux and reflux of polytheism and theism. Polytheism is multi objects of worship, polytheism. Theism is monotheistic, sorry, two poles. Now, David Hume says that humanity, until some time, goes or a cyclical, like Ibn Khaldun's cyclical. Every 100 years, there is a strong asabiya, and then corruption, and then again a strong asabiya. David Hume says there is a flux of polytheism, but it is so concrete objects of worship, and so some of them is now being praised, the idols, idolatry, some idols, and then it goes towards the pendulum goes towards theism, one distant deity versus, the close, concrete, immanent one, from the immanent pole to the other more elevated higher pole. So there is a flux and reflux, like Ibn Khaldun's. So he combined these two theories to explain the Islamic history, at least in Northern Africa. But in this chapter, he also comes back and he says, now this pendulum stopped, and there are now modern, there is a modern period, and in this modern period, he develops a typology of Turkey in one pole, Saudi Arabia in the other, Libya and Algeria somewhere, and Morocco in another pole. Now he chooses two variables to typologize these countries, or these types of transformation into the modern world. Now, one type in the one pole, there is Turkey, where there is, he says, a mild religion, not radical fundamentalist, and in opposition to that, there is secularism, but a radical institutional, political institutional, transforming from monarchy, constitutional monarchy, to republic, and Republican institutions. Remember, we studied how a new constitution, a new educational institution, and a parliament, etc., etc., etc. Those are radical, but secularism and religion, mild, a combination. Now, in the opposite, traditional institutions, kingdom, actually, traditional institutions, Wahhabism, a radical Islam, absence of secularism. So, fundamentalist religion, Wahhabist religion, with traditional political, social, institutional arrangement. Okay, in between the two, for example, in Morocco, there is traditional kingdom, but secular Islam is mild. So political institutions are traditional with a mild form of religion, which eventually is not anymore. And then both radical, both religion, secularism variable is radical, and also institutions like in Libya and in Algeria. But in this article that he delivered in 1997, in this, as I already said, in Sibel Bozdoğan, Reşat Kasaba, Rethinking Modernity and National Identity, the Turkish option in comparative perspective, he develops a theory about military interventions in Turkey. Now, he said, okay, Turkey is, in terms of a typology of transformation, a type where there is secularism, okay, in terms of religion, secularism in terms of religion and or the sacred and this worldly relationship, this worldization, dünyevileşme, and religion relationship. It is on the it brought a secular military, a secular bureaucracy into power to protect the new secular republic versus peripheral, like in the case of David Hume, or in the case of Ibn Khaldun, like the tribal. Now, in the Turkish case, it is not tribal, but peripheral political parties, elections, populism. So populism getting elected, like in Democratic Party, from 1950, 54, winning again, 57, winning again, but somehow the military intervening. And then from 1960 to 1971, again, so it is, although, you know, in Ibn Khaldun case or in David Hume case, in between there are 100 years. Now here, 10 years in between the military coup, like in Yalçın Küçük's economic crisis explanation, and Ernest Gellner's cyclical relationship between military and civilian relationship, and how every 10 years up to 1980, this cyclical flux and reflux, in a sense, continued. But it seems, he said in 1997, although, you know, in the same year, there was a postmodern coup, but at the time he delivered this paper. I think that a postmodern coup did not take place. Anyway, so this was it. Now, from here, I will go to, I was going into Ümit Cizre's ideology, context, and interest. You know, she has a chapter on the Turkish military, and then she has in 2011, that was 2008, actually. It is also in the Cambridge History of Turkey. This is Reşat Kasaba's another book, remember, edited books. But also she has an article in 2011, Disentangling Threads of Civil Military Relations. And now towards the end of the article, Ümit Cizre, as an expert on civil military relationships, by training, the military bureaucracy is intolerant of any version of Turkish politics that strays beyond what it considers correct at a given juncture. In order for intelligent lessons to be drawn from Ergenekon, she talks about Ergenekon trials at the time, you know, 2011, she has written this article. Training and positions on issues in armed forces must also be brought in line with 21st century realities. And in turn, an esoteric ideological approach to politics, society, and the world must be abandoned. She's saying that the polarized civil-military struggle, fight type of relationship should be abandoned. Now, there is an article again in 2011 by Ali Karaosmanoğlu, Transformation of Turkey's Military-Civil Relations. And in this article, what Karaosmanoğlu says is that actually that is left behind. Now, he says that in July 2007, you know, the Justice and Development Party won a second time, and the you know, people were afraid that there will be a military coup. But now this is from Ali Karaosmanoğlu. But these developments led to a perplexing turn in civil-military relations. Many people in the country and abroad were expecting the confrontation to result in a coup d'etat, at least in a heavy military encroachment upon politics. Remarkably, none of these happened. Instead, there was an emergence of a new pattern, which was marked by common understanding and implicit but effective collaboration between civilian government and the military. Now, this is an observation by an international relations expert and also an expert on civil-military relationships. So he goes into international structural dimension of this collaboration between military and civilian government, the historical cultural dimension, and then he comes to the conclusion that the history of modern Turkey is not that of a conflict between republic. Now, there's a quotation from Sherif Mardin. Now, Sherif Mardin says that the history of modern Turkey is not that of a conflict between republicanism and sultanism, nor is it a history of strife, struggle, framed by Islam and secularism. Now, that's interesting observation. It's a complex, many-tiered or tiered encounter between traditional forces and modernity that have interpenetrated and being transformed over time due to their propinquity. It's also a story of the constitution of new spaces where these forces have met and changed. So instead of conceptualizing Turkish history as a struggle between military and civilian forces, it is better to view them or to view Turkish modernization as interpenetration of traditional forces and modernity. And remember, we read an article by Sharif Mardin, where he elaborates this interpenetration starting from early 19th century through 19th century and through 20th century. And Ali Karaosmanoğlu is following from this and saying that this interpenetration has legitimized change and facilitated their adaptation to modernity. The spaces of shared understanding were constituted by the state, and for the state, the common objective being the adjustment of the state to changing environment to ensure its preservation. So this transformation and preservation of state and preservation of identity. These are sociological inputs or impetuses in Turkish social history, social political history, actually. So I will not go into details now. I have to bring this lecture to an end by two articles from Yavuz Çilliler. Now, Yavuz Çilliler wrote an article in 2016. The title is Popular Determinant on the Civil-Military Relations in Turkey. Now, this article is written just before 15th of July 2016 failed military intervention in 2016, 15th of July. And there he says that he continues, actually, Ali Karaosmanoğlu's observation. And he says, following the coup of 1980, limited demilitarization process in Turkey was carried out partly with the help of civilian leaders' personalities, partly with the support of the European Union membership procedures, which has been ineffective since 2005. How civilianization was accomplished since then still needs to be clarified. So there is still a problem he senses here, and then he says that in his article, he aims to explain the factors that enabled civilians to gain full control over armed forces, and he says that in this there was a factor of populism, as the title says, popular determinant, popular determinant coming into power. And here he goes into, actually, my professor in University of Chicago, Morris Janowitz, a leading scholar. He has this book on army. The name of the book is Professional Soldier, about civil military relations in America. Now Janowitz goes into or prefers conscripted army instead of a a professional army, you know, professionally paid military instead of military, conscripted. Yeah, that is from the society. The members of the army are conscripted from the population. So that kind of an army is closer to the population instead of being opposite to the society. It is more society military relationships are better arranged, he says, and of course he goes into education of the army personnel, etc. Now this is the first article of Çilliler. Now second article is written in 2018, just after 15 July coup attempt. Now, of course, he has to explain, you know, how this happened. Whereas, you know, in 2016, just before the failed coup attempt, he was saying that, you know, there is this popular, popular factor. As a matter of fact, the failure of the coup in 15th of July, 2016, was there's this popular support to the government. You know, people coming to the streets and stopping the soldiers, which are, you know, a Jemaat, the Gülenist Jemaat's capture of some members of the army, and you know, the number of joining this religious organization. Maybe it was 1/3 or half, we don't know, but a part of the army attempted a coup, and the people and the civilian government, as Çilliler predicted in his first article, is being stopped. So I think with this article, the two articles together is interesting. Okay, before I finish, you can read these. You know, I put them here. One more article, the last article that I will talk, is by Olivia Glombitza. Now, this is in 2021. The title is "The Aftermath of Turkey's July 15 coup attempt." Now, normalizing the exceptional through legitimation, narrativization, and ritualization. Okay, my voice already gone. I will not go into detail, but let me just quote this quotation. Although the state of emergency, as you know, there was a state of emergency imposed after the failed coup, was considered an exceptional event, not meant for the longue durée, its measures and restrictions were not reversed or withdrawn once stability was restored. Instead, they remained in place for 2 years and were accompanied by a government-led process of normalization that in many ways stood in stark contrast to the seemingly democratic ambitions advanced by the Justice and Development Party at the inception of its rule in 2002. Okay, let me stop with this quotation from Olivia Glombitza's 2021 article. Okay, now I'm tired. I hope you will have comments or questions. If not closely